Okay, so I'm interviewing my teacher based on a current discussion in the White House of arming teachers with loaded weapons in the classroom. So, for starters, how do you feel about owning a weapon in the classroom and why?
There are a few things that I can definitively say I think are just a bad idea, without question. I think that is such a bad idea. Like owning a weapon in the classroom, there's so much evidence to show that homes that have weapons in them, children become victims of violence through accidents, and I don't see why a classroom would be any different. I am a teacher, and nothing about teaching to me says that I'm supposed to be someone who owns a weapon. But I'm sure you're going to get into it further, so I'll give more opinions as the interview goes on.
Okay, next question. Do you believe guns in the classroom could decrease or increase gun issues?
I definitely think guns in the classroom could increase gun issues because I think if students know, or teachers or community members know that there are guns on campus, there could be so much more security issues with people trying to access those guns and inflict damage to people who are on this campus, to come and steal the guns and inflict damage to people in the community. It just would add a whole other threat level. It would make this place seem more like a prison than a school.
Could a gun in the classroom help prevent or possibly end a school shooting?
Now, I do think there could be a very, very rare instance where maybe a gun in the classroom could end a school shooting because someone could respond. But we need to remember that in those situations, even the most trained professionals have a hard time reacting instantly. For example, you might know the movie The Shooter with Mark Wahlberg was based on a real case about a Navy SEAL. Navy SEALs were highly trained. He was a highly trained sniper, someone who had hours and hours and hours, incalculable hours of training to do something where he had to specifically be able to shoot targets in extremely high stress situations. When he returned from war, he was taking a friend out to a shooting range because they were worried that friend was suffering from PTSD. That friend at the shooting range got a weapon, and that Navy SEAL who had all this training, even he didn't have time to react and was shot and killed. So the fact that we could say, oh, let's just put teachers through, 10, 12, 20, 30 hours of training and they'll be able to end the school shooting, I really doubt that.
Yeah, and
could
even people in the military and all that,
Mhm.
even when they go to war, many people still, even then, they are trained to kill,
Yep, and they
but
freeze up.
and stop, and they can't even manage it
Yep.
themselves. Okay. If a past, future, or present student, or even a random person were to enter the classroom with the intentions of harming your students, do you believe you could pull the trigger?
Well, I don't believe I would have a gun, so it wouldn't be ever pulling a trigger for me. But if someone were to enter the classroom with a gun, I am confident that my first action would be that I would throw myself in front of my students. I don't think that is my responsibility, though. I think there's too much emphasis being put on the fact that, like, oh, teachers are meant to give their lives for our students. Of course, we want to protect our students, but the fact that we're expected to give our lives, I think, is a little bit sad because it's ignoring the fact that we just shouldn't have guns on campuses. But I, of course, would definitely do everything that I could to protect my students because I love them. Being a teacher is not just my job, it's who I am, it's my calling. I see all of them as my own children, and I would do anything to protect them.
What kind of trauma or possible PTSD do you think you would be left with if you were to kill or seriously harm a person, assuming
Yeah.
that were
So
to happen?
you interviewed someone, a student who wrote that if they saw a teacher shoot another, someone who came on campus with a gun, they'd see that teacher as a killer.
Yes.
And I think that's true. I think that executions being done in front of kids, even if it was to protect them, they would then never see that teacher again as a teacher. They would see that teacher as a murderer. And the PTSD from that, I'm not an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder, but I can imagine that it would change all of those students' lives forever. I know that students who have been victims of these shootings across our country, they say that their lives have been changed forever, and I don't doubt that.
What about you personally? You
What I
performing the act.
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine what type of long-term effect that would have. I know that I would suffer from PTSD. Taking someone's life is not anything I ever want to do. I mean, I've had small instances where I was watching my niece or nephew and they choked on a gumball and I still had nightmares about it. So obviously I'd never want to take someone's life.
How could seeing their teacher with a loaded weapon in the classroom affect your age group of students?
The number one way that I think, because I think I'm a pretty effective teacher. I think my students trust me, and that because of that, I'm able to teach my students not only the skills they need to become successful readers and writers and thinkers, but successful adults. And I think I'm able to do that because of the relationship I have with my kids. I think students know they can come to me when they're concerned. I think students know that they can come to me when they need help with something. And if they knew that I always had a gun, I don't know if they would feel safe coming to me after school, especially if I looked a little bit stressed that day, or if they weren't so sure that, I don't know, if they felt like somehow that they didn't have a good relationship with me. I think that even kids now who sometimes maybe I'm not their favorite teacher, they still feel like they can come to me and be safe. I don't think that would be the case if they knew we had guns. I think that also the type of teacher who's going to volunteer to get a gun is a type of teacher who I honestly would be afraid to have my own child in their classroom, because I'd want to know, why are you so eager to have a gun around kids?
Do you trust yourself or other teachers possibly with a weapon and not harm a student?
No, I don't trust. I would not want to work in a school where other teachers had weapons. I never want to own a weapon. It's not that I don't trust myself with it. It's that I don't think it's a good idea for all the reasons I said before. I think that someone else could come in and get it. I think that a student could access it. I think someone in the community who wants to inflict harm could access it. And I don't want other teachers on campus having that either. And another major reason why I don't want it is not about trust, but it's about, a school is supposed to be a safe place where we grow and learn together, not a place that has a prison atmosphere. And the more that we add guns to school campuses, we are reinforcing the idea that we're treating our students like prisoners and they shouldn't have choice and they should be pushed down and squashed and just be completely treated like criminals, and they're not.
Some issues that previous students I've talked to have said was that with having a teacher owning a weapon in the classroom is if a teacher were to get mad and use the weapon on a student.
And we saw a case of that, right? I think it was last month on the East Coast. I forget what state, but it was actually a history teacher who pulled out
Texas.
I'm not sure. I thought it was on the East Coast, but you could be right. We can look into it later. There was a teacher who did pull out a weapon, and they had a weapon. And so this is the thing, is that's why I said I don't trust that idea. I think there are teachers who might have their own issues. They might have things going on in their personal life, and this is a stressful job, and they might snap. And if they have a weapon at their disposal, oh my gosh, that is such a frightening concept.
What do you suggest could be an alternate option instead of arming teachers?
I think there's a lot of things we have to do. Our school board president sent out a notification to all the families in West Sacramento. I don't know if you saw it, if your parents saw it, saying that the West Sac School Board is getting training from the police, and staff will be getting training on how to respond in cases of active shooters, as well as that the West Sacramento School Board is supporting the idea of an assault weapons ban in the state of California, and an assault weapons ban across the country. And I think that's a really brave move of our school board president to make, because I think the more that we don't have access to these automatic or semi-automatic weapons, these weapons that were meant to be weapons of war, that is a huge step forward. I also think that our schools and our communities, our country needs to devote more resources, meaning money, for mental health services at schools so that kids who are going through moments of depression or abuse at home or anything where they're feeling unsafe or insecure, they can get services they need at school. We are getting there. We have some services at our school, but we need more. Our kids need more, and every school needs that, not just Bridgeway or Elkhorn, but every school needs it so every kid has access to the mental health resources they need. There's also not that much evidence, though, that mental health is directly connected to school shootings. There's a lot of evidence that just the presence of guns and the access to guns. I really think it's important that we do really focus on making it so access to guns is not something that is readily available in our community.
The last question you sort of answered already a little was teachers are supposed to protect their students with their life. Do you believe owning a weapon will fall under that category of all costs?
Yeah, so I think you have a word is a teacher supposed to protect their students at all costs. Do you believe owning a weapon falls under that category? I guess to answer your question, my answer is I think owning a weapon would make my students less safe. Because again, the weapon in the classroom, in my opinion, based on the research that I have seen about weapons in homes, and the statistics there show that weapons in homes make families less safe because those weapons tend to get used against their own family, not even purposely, but by accident. There was a case that we read about on the Everytown website a few weeks ago where 2 children, both under the age of 5, found a gun and one shot the other. Not purposely, obviously, they're small children. But so in my opinion, if I'm going to make sure my students are safe, keeping the gun out of my class is the best way to do that.
I have an additional thing to ask you. Also, as a new parent, I would like to ask some questions on more of that topic, Morley. Would you be okay leaving your child in a place in which was armed by teachers? No.
I 100% definitely never want my child in a school where there are guns. I plan to, as my child grows up, he's a baby now, but as he grows up, when he goes to play at other kids' houses, I plan to ask the parents of those kids if they own guns. And if they do, I plan to ask them, where are they? Are they locked up? Are they secure? Which I know that might sound crazy to some people, but if my kid's going to be playing at your house, I want to make sure that he doesn't accidentally end up hurting your kid and your kid doesn't end up hurting my kid or any other situation that could arise from that. I want to know where those guns are.
What would you think of a teacher if they killed or injured a person for the sake of your child's safety?
So killed or injured, those are 2 different situations. So if a teacher was able to tackle and maybe that led to the death of someone for my child's safety, if that person actually, if the evidence shows that that person was on campus, like on the daycare or on campus to hurt, then of course I'd be thankful. So for example, that coach in Parkland who threw his body in between, I know those parents are so thankful. And I'm sure he would have, if he could have tackled the person, he would have. But I think that situation is really hard.
And that would be it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.